how we became codependent, how to know that you are codependent, and what you can do about it. So how did we get here? How did we become codependent? First of all, you are born into a family that was likely already codependent, and you adopted this behavior as your own, also as normal. You were also born into a family that ignored problems. They may have been brought up at first and said, we'll talk about that later, but then they never were. And you also probably had some family members who repressed their own emotions. They were not only ignoring the problems within the family, but they were ignoring their own selves. They weren't in tune with their feelings. They didn't express their feelings. And they were also not comfortable when you expressed yours. And then within that family system, you had parents who disregarded their own needs. They would be giving towards others to their own detriment. So you witnessed that, you were taught that to take care of your own needs was something that was selfish. Your own needs didn't matter. And you started to lose touch, not only with your own feelings, but also with your own needs. This family also may have lacked trust in the outside world, trust in you, trust in themselves. They may have been very overprotective because they didn't trust that you were, capable enough to make your own choices. And as a child, you may have also been made fun of or belittled. And finally, how to become codependent? Be raised by a parent with addiction. A lot of adult children of alcoholics are later in life showing traits of codependency. How to know if you have actually become codependent? Here are a few signs. You have an exaggerated sense of responsibility for other people's behavior. An exaggerated sense, as in you take on the problems of other people like they're actually your own. And with that, other people's failures, other people's mistakes feel like your failures and your mistakes. You may even have come to pity the people that you love. You pity the people that you love. You feel so sorry for them. You think that they are very incapable of doing anything. If it wasn't for you here to help them, oh, who knows where they would be. You swoop in there and you take care of everything before they've even asked. So therefore, this goes to the next point, which is you're always doing more than is required or more than what is your share of the work. You feel bitter and resentful when people don't accept or recognize your help or your good deeds. So, that person who shows up, who did it all, not giving other people an opportunity to contribute, and they didn't even say thank you. Oh, they didn't even recognize my hard work that I put into all of this. And then what happens, the next sign that you're codependent is you're hanging on to relationships that are unhealthy. They've gone beyond repair now. But you're still hanging in there. You're still hanging in there because you feel like there must be something more I can do for this person. But there's also the other element that you're hanging in there because you don't want to be alone. Now, these are not true for all people who are codependent, but if you're saying yes to the majority of these things, then it's very likely. Another area is you can't take a compliment. Somebody compliments you, you think like, oh, what do they want from me? They're just being nice. And you don't like receiving gifts because that means someone is doing something nice for you. And you're not used to that reciprocal attention. You're used to being the one who's always giving the gifts and doing the things. So when someone gives something to you, it doesn't feel right. You're not used to that. And with difficulty receiving compliments, you might also have difficulty receiving criticism because there is some sensitivity there as we go back to those early years when you were made fun of and belittled for who you were. So any sound of criticism is a personal blow and it's devastating. Let's get to the list of what you can do. And if you went to the first list of how did we get here to begin with, how does somebody become codependent? You really have to go to that first list as a guide to heal those wounded parts of you and learn what was never taught to you. So first you have to start to face your own reality head on instead of always sticking your head in the sand, kind of being that ostrich and avoiding conflict all the time. You got to be acknowledging that there is such a thing as healthy conflict. It does exist. And I know perhaps you've been butting heads with people a lot. And so it seems impossible. But that's part of the relearning process, is how to have healthy, productive, respectful conflict confrontations with other people. That also means that you have to learn how to be assertive, right? Facing conflicts as an opportunity to strengthen your relationships. And what was probably also lacking in your relationships were boundaries. You didn't have any boundaries with yourself. You didn't have any boundaries with other people. You never expressed a boundary to anyone. If you did, it would come out sounding like an order, because boundaries weren't taught to you. So now you have to learn boundaries. You have to learn how to have emotional boundaries. You have to learn to understand that just because somebody is feeling a certain way doesn't mean that it's your responsibility to go in and save them and make them feel better. No, that's the whole holding of space. So you want to start to find relationships with people who are already modeling healthy emotional boundaries. Because otherwise, if you get in a relationship with someone who doesn't have emotional boundaries and makes you responsible for their emotions, you're going to relapse back into your codependency traits again. You also are going to have to learn about what your own needs are and how you can fulfill your own needs. Because right now, you've been fulfilling your needs for acceptance and love through other people and what you can do for them. Instead of looking at what can I do for myself, you may have lost your whole purpose and passion in life. You may have completely disconnected from who you are as a person. You might be asking yourself, who am I? I don't know who I am anymore or ever did. This can be the most difficult thing you're ever going to have to do. But start by looking at the needs that you took care of in other people. What were the needs that you tended to in other people? Those are the needs that you're going to have to tend to in yourself. You're also going to have to learn how to rebuild your self-trust and learn all the ways that you can be more open and vulnerable with your emotions. So instead of just getting angry all the time, what is underneath that anger? It's probably sadness that you were never allowed to express, because back in the day, when you would express your sadness and vulnerable emotions, they were ignored. Remember? Issues were pushed under the table. So you're going to probably have to go through a lot of inner work, inner child work. Your inner child might not be trusting you. You're going to have to rebuild that connection to yourself. That, again, is going to take some time. Now, if you're carrying around some perfectionist attitudes with yourself, that's going to also need to go to the wayside. Because as a perfectionist, you are going to get very impatient with this process. You're going to get very frustrated with yourself as you go and change the narrative in your head and change those limiting beliefs that have been contributing to your codependent behaviors. That's why practicing self-compassion is going to be the best way to overcome your toxic shame and guilt. Being able to hold your feelings with understanding, validate your own feelings, and then be able to tune into what you need so that you can show up for your feelings with compassion. And last, but certainly not least, you're going to have to start to overcome your own addictions, not only codependency addiction, but maybe you also have some addiction to alcohol, to substances, to food, to shopping, whatever it is that you've been using or overusing during this time to numb yourself, to forget about problems, to disconnect from yourself even more. You're going to need to face those things head on.